Through eighth grade, I was sort of enjoying the fact that I could do reasonably well without any effort. They had this thing where you'd get an effort, which would be 1, 2, or 3, and then a grade. And so the ideal I always wanted was an A3, where you had the least effort but the highest grade. So my grades weren't all that great. And then in eighth grade, I had been at a private school for a couple of years and decided that I better start getting good grades, both in terms of having some freedom, the way I'd be treated, and thinking about college. So from ninth grade on, I had a reasonably spotless grade record. So I got quite serious about grades at that point. Math was the thing that came most natural to me. And, you'd take these exams, some of which were sort of nationwide exams, and I did quite well on those, and that gave me some confidence. And I had some teachers who were very encouraging. They let me read textbooks. They encouraged me to take a college course on symbolic math, which is actually called algebra. So I felt pretty confident in my math skills, which is a nice thing because not only the sciences, but economics, a lot of things, if you're comfortable with math and statistics and ways of looking at cause and effect, that's extremely helpful. I had one named Paul Stockland who, at the school I was at, who challenged me. Later, one named Fred Wright, who challenged me. Then, I actually majored in math for the time I was at college because, it was a very interesting topic. But it was kind of a strange topic because there's not a direct career for most people in terms of being a full-time mathematician. So for all but very few people, it's a tool that you use, but probably not what you're going to spend your life working on. My parents had this notion that I had this high potential somehow and that I was not taking advantage of it. The environment I'd been in, sort of being a goof-off, was more socially rewarding than being that serious. And it was public school, so they weren't pushing people all that hard. You could read the textbook in the first week and, sort of there wasn't anything interesting going to happen the rest of the school year. And so they had me take an exam to go to a private school. And I thought, well, should I pass this exam or not? You could fail it and you wouldn't have to go. But that sort of violated my sense of integrity that, hey, I'm good at taking tests. I don't want to get confused about that. So I was admitted, and they encouraged me to go. It was a boys' school, reasonably strict. During the time I was there, it actually transitioned, merged with a girls' school, and stopped having uniforms, stopped calling the teachers master. So it became pretty normal. But it was a change at first. And the idea of just being kind of a goof-off wasn't the sort of high reward position like it'd been in public school. So that my parents were right. It had the intended effect of creating a more challenging environment. And some teachers who were nice about saying that I should try harder and exposing me to a lot of math and science. And eventually, that's where I got to use the computer. Lakeside was a longer school day, and it's a change. I had gotten super comfortable at public school, kind of being goofy. And, here people were studying, and at first, because I didn't get great grades, they had me in a study hall. And a few people who got really good grades didn't have to go to the study hall. And nobody knew, that I was actually clever. So they were actually treating me like some average student. Anyway, it was an adjustment, and all the other kids there were making the adjustment as well. So it took a couple of years to get my grounding. I'm super glad that I went to that school. It was a fantastic school. I'll probably send my kids to that school. The Lakeside's Mothers Club had a rummage sale every year to raise money for the school. And instead of just funding the budget, they always would fund something kind of new and interesting in addition. And without too much understanding, they decided having a computer terminal at the school would be a novel thing. It was a teletype, uppercase only, 10 characters a second, and you had to share a phone line to call into a big computer, a time-sharing computer that was very expensive. It charged, when you were connected up, it would charge, and then when you actually had a program running, it would charge a lot more. And so they set up this teletype, and some of the math and science teachers, played around with it. One of them accidentally spent a lot of money with the infinite loop program. They spent like $200 by surprise. And so they were a bit intimidated, and a bunch of us kind of hung out there and tried out different things. The programming language was BASIC, which was quite novel at the time. It had been invented by some Dartmouth professors. And so that was the first computer language I learned. And I wrote increasingly complex programs. And so that 8th grade exposure was a pretty neat thing, even though what the machine we were working on was quite limited. The idea of students playing around with a computer was very unusual at the time. And in fact, that computer, eventually the costs were high enough they took it away, but then some other computer companies had come around, including one in Seattle, that a bunch of us went down and volunteered to help out and do some work for us. So from that point on, we always managed, although it was dicey at times, to find access to computers. And that was very unusual in high school. But it took a lot of initiative on our part to get those experiences, but we wouldn't have done it if we hadn't had that early 8th grade exposure. The key point is that computers were immensely expensive and cost millions of dollars, a machine that was far less powerful than what you have in a cell phone today. And so that either you'd have a very important application, or you just shared the machine with other people, and still you had to pay quite a bit of money. And so time sharing is where you're connected up and sharing the machine. It's a lot better than sending your programs in, because you can see when you make a mistake pretty quickly. Even so, because they charge us so much, we'd actually type the programs offline on a paper tape so that we didn't have any delay for typing. And then when we got onto the computer, we'd feed in that tape so that there was less time online. But it gave you a sense of, okay, what you got right and wrong, and you could try and correct things. We also, because at that time, the dominant form of computing was using punch cards, we actually did that quite a bit. We were down at the University of Washington and used some of those punch card systems. As computers became less expensive, so-called mini computers, then more people had access, mostly scientists and business people, but also we managed to find machines that weren't being used at night. The idea of a machine is something that an individual would use and that would just sit there idle when they weren't using it. That only made sense about a decade later, when the work that we and others had done had gotten the price down so dramatically that the idea of a computer sitting idle doesn't feel like some huge waste of resources like it did when they were so expensive and rare.